Hi, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking with Chad Nicholas about his new book, Shade. Now, it's already out and ready for you to buy and read, so go do that. But if you haven't, just skip this and come back later because we're going to be talking about spoilers. So this is Chad. Say hi, Chad.
Hey, yeah, I'm Chad.
Do you want to
Or
say
so
anything?
I claim.
Oh, so he claims. Do you want to say anything before we get on with all the questions that I have for you?
Yeah, I can. My name's Chad Nicholas. I am the author of Nightmare, which was a psychological horror thriller novel that came out last October. The hardcover has this cool reverse cover underneath.
It's my favorite.
So, yeah, it deals with crows, a lot of family issues, things like that. So it's got some foreshadowing plot twists in it. And then recently, the book that this is about is Shade. It's a crime thriller. Trying to get the cover where it doesn't have a glare. It's a crime thriller about detectives hunting a serial killer, and so it's quite a bit different than Nightmare, but it's got some of the same stuff. So yeah, and then I'm currently working on a third book that should be released at some point.
Do you want to talk about the third book real quick?
I can just a little.
Okay.
The third book's I finished the first draft not too long ago from when this is recorded. It's going to be a slasher novel, so it's again quite a bit different than both Nightmare and Shade. I keep writing different books.
You do.
It's harder, but it's also fun because I get to do different things. But yeah, so this one's going to be a slasher. It's quite a bit longer. The first draft of it's actually, I think it was 8 pages off of being twice as long as Nightmare.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite a bit bigger. There's more characters, more plot lines that go back and forth. So I'm really excited for it. I'm not ready to release the title just yet, but I like how the first draft turned out, so that seems to be going good too.
I mean, that's great because some writers stick with just one thing and you're just over here and over there. It shows that you're versatile and you can do all kinds of things. So for me, that's great as a reader because I personally like to read a whole bunch of different things. I don't just stick with horror or thriller or whatever. I like everything. So
Yeah.
let's talk about Shade. So I read this book in 24 hours. I don't know if I told you that, but I read it. I don't remember what time you sent it to me. It was sometime after midnight. And I finished it before midnight the next day. Like I had to take breaks, obviously, but I read it in 24 hours. It was just that good. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. If you're uncomfortable with answering anything, just let me know. How did you get the idea for Shade? Where did all that come from?
Well, it was funny because Shade's actually, I've said before, but Shade was the first book idea that I really had that was like a serious idea where I was like, this might be something I can actually write a full story of. And I was just doing something random, and all of a sudden, the original concept, because this is full spoilers, right?
Oh yeah, full spoilers.
Okay. Just I always like to check just beforehand. So the original idea, I noticed there's a lot of movies that I'm really big fans of where it's an action movie where the one-man army hero is trying to protect someone, typically a lady or a child, but one of those trying to protect them, and they're like kind of like Rambo 2, John Wick, not as much because he's not protecting one, kind of like Logan, where it's like the hero who can kill like 30 people without much of a problem protecting someone from a bunch of bad guys. And my original idea was I wanted to do that, but backwards. I wanted to make it where instead of it being, oh, the good guy hero can kill 20 bad guys, it's Shade, the bad guy throughout the book, can kill 20, 30 FBI agents without much of an issue. So I thought it might be a cool reverse of tension where instead of the like long fight scenes being like, yay, the hero's killed 20 people, this is so fun, it's like, oh crap, he's killed 20 people, we're all gonna die. So I had the idea for that, and then throughout it I knew that I had the idea for that, and then I knew right off the bat because I really love plot twists.
You're the plot twist master. Go on.
I write quite a bit. So I knew right off the bat that I wanted the twist at the end to be revealed that Shade wasn't the bad guy. So because of that, it came from, I added Jack to it. So I was like, that will be a twist where the whole time I get the tension of the person's killing a bunch of people, but then it's a flip at the end where the evil hero who's been killing so many people isn't that. And then I just started piecing together what kind of plot motivations worked. And originally it was very much just a strict action book. But then I was like, well, I want there to be a reason that they think the heroes went insane. And I was like, I want it to be like right off the bat in the book, they acknowledge this person used to be good. So I kind of had the idea for the serial killer and the trauma and the PTSD stuff. And I've always been a fan of like a lot of movies have the detectives where they kind of see visions and stuff. And I was like, I want to do that, but do it a lot more, where instead of just they see one or two visions, it's directly impacts the fight. And that's how I had the idea to make that Shade's flaw, why he went crazy and stuff. So from there, I just started kind of just like Nightmare, I started writing it backwards from the twist, trying to figure out where it all do. I created Sarah so her character arc would match Shade and Jack. Originally, in the very first draft, Jack was a lot more, well, not the first draft, the first like outline. Jack was a lot more just strictly evil, but it really wasn't working. So I wanted Shade and Jack to have turned crazy for the exact same reason. So I kind of tried to work their character arc together, and Jack and Shade were both heading towards the same point. Shade just handled it worse or better, depending on how you look at it.
I say better.
But yeah, but yeah, because Jack kind of went off the deep end.
Oh
but,
yeah.
And from that, still, even like 6-7 months when I started, before I started writing it, when I was outlining, the whole flashbacks didn't exist. It was going to be
okay.
Where Jack just explained, like they existed, but they weren't going to be written. Jack would have just explained what happened. But then when I was outlining, there was, because of the way the present day was, there's no opportunity to really develop Shade. Jack was developed a little, but it wasn't to the point to where it was making it feel like the twist was just a cheap thing I threw in at the end. And I want it to be developed. No, this is someone slowly going insane, but like you don't realize which one it is. So I added the flashbacks and decided I'd actually write them out about 6-7 months before I started writing. So then I added them to the outline. And then after I added because I still felt like something was missing, but after I added the flashbacks, it all kind of fell into place. And I liked the genre shifting from crime thriller to more of an action thriller. And I thought the flashbacks made it way better than it would have been with the original idea.
I assumed because Nightmare was so psychological that you intentionally put in the, like you knew you were going to put in the flashbacks, because like you're saying it's like a crime thriller kind of action thriller, but I think it's more of like a crime thriller / psychological thriller with a lot of action involved, because there's some mental issues, there's some mental trauma going on with all three of our main, well, actually every character that is in this book, dead or alive, has lots of mental anguish, which leads me to my next question. Did you research PTSD, mental breaks, mental disabilities? Did you look up any of that before you started writing?
To a degree. I didn't like sit down and do dedicated college research or anything, but I watched a very large amount of movies, so I knew how they'd handled it. For example, I looked to Saving Private Ryan for one example. I thought it handled it really well. And then stuff like that, I tried to like vary it from character to character. Whereas Sarah kind of has the more, I don't want to say standard. Sarah has the more, she reacts to it a little more like a normal person would. That still sounds bad to me, but
definition of normal. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Whereas Shade and Jack were more the extremes. They really couldn't deal with it. And then stuff like that. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. Who was it? Hello Future Me did a great like 45-minute video about writing mental illness. He talked about PTSD a lot. So I watched that. It was very helpful. And then I watched quite a few YouTube videos about it and did research like that and tried to construct it within like the movies I've seen that handle it. Because like, again, a lot of the detective shows have the characters have PTSD. I know a lot of people talk about True Detective. I've never seen it, but people act like it handled it really well. But yeah, so I tried to go from there, and then I tried to have each one do a different aspect of it, where Sarah was more of the calm guilt, Shade was more of the violent hallucinations, and then Jack was a mixture of both. And then kind of that, and that's kind of where Shade's hallucinations came from, because I've always really loved one character I've always really loved is Scarecrow from Batman comics.
Okay.
My dream's still to write a Scarecrow novel one day for DC. I
Just
hope they
keep
let me,
saying
but
it. Just keep saying it. They'll
yeah,
find you eventually.
yeah, hopefully. But I actually wrote a fan fiction that's like it's a short story, so I'm planning on releasing it soon, either
Cool.
late this year, early next year, to kind of maybe do something. But anyway, I like the idea of visions and stuff you're afraid of coming back, and I wanted the fight scenes to feel unique and something that doesn't happen in other books. And because of that, I thought the fact that Shade is the unstoppable killer, but he can't just kill because he goes insane as he does, was would kind of make it more unique and more something that only, which I'm sure I'm not saying it's never been done before, but something that makes it a little more unique than just fighting 20 people. So
Oh
I kind
yeah.
of tried to tie that into the PTSD too. And it gave me more opportunities to do some horror stuff. So
Yeah. I've read several books that have that sort of element, but yours was distinctly different on how you handled the violence of it and the mental capacity of each character. And I appreciate that as a reader, but I also appreciated every bit of violence in the book because I like gore and I like if this sounds so bad, but like when someone gets dismembered in a book, I don't want it to happen to anybody in real life, but fictional is fine. Okay,
yeah.
so let's talk about your two different plot twists and both John Buck and Jack being a killer, being a murderer.
Well, again, Jack was the original. Jack being the twist killer was very early in the planning. It was like within a week after I had the idea, and I had the idea quite a few years ago, but it was like 2 or 3 years before I actually sit down to try to write a book from when I started hoping I would. But yeah, so Jack was always thinking that's one of the reasons why I really kind of like Nightmare. I don't want to spoil Nightmare in this one, but kind of like the twist that Nightmare was a twist that I've seen done a lot and I always really liked, but noticed a lot of people didn't care for. And I wanted to try to fix it and do it in a different way. In a lot of crime thrillers, it's done before where the cop who's good ends up being the twist killer. And I've always I've liked the concept, but I've always disliked it whenever it's used because it's always feels like they just all of a sudden flip and suddenly they're evil. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
the
oh yeah, they were a
execution.
serial killer the whole time. And that's one of the things that will, especially because I love detective movies, detective thrillers, I love the genre. But one thing I found they do a lot that just is a very weird pet peeve I have is the twist killer, someone who it's either the cop and it's not foreshadowed at all why they went insane, or it's some random person who we've seen once and can't remember what their
Yeah.
name is. It's played as a massive thing. So I tried to avoid that, and that's why I added the flashbacks in the first place, because I knew that I wanted Jack to be the killer, but I wanted it to be revealed this is why, and I knew I wanted to give it enough foreshadowing that it wasn't just a twist out of nowhere. It made sense. It was Jack's logical conclusion, which is why I added in all the stuff of him saying whatever it takes. I wanted to establish that this felt like something this character would do. At this point, it might not be the only thing he could have done, but it made sense
Yeah.
as to why to Jack this seemed like a logical conclusion. And that's even in the instant, in a certain aspect, Jack's not 100% wrong. His logic makes decent sense. He can't catch the killer if he doesn't kill someone, kill one person, save more. It's not completely
You mean
the
crazy
logic
people
is there.
sense? But okay.
Yeah, the logic is there for someone like Jack who's
Yeah.
focused his entire life on catching the serial killer, and to him the cops who didn't catch his killer didn't do enough, so there's not a line he won't cross. And then I wanted to set up why Shade isn't the killer, because Shade's whole thing, even in the military, was he goes insane but he doesn't stop fighting. So the flashbacks were there because I wanted to do the cop who's been good the whole time being a serial killer twist, but I didn't want it to feel out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
I wanted it to be more of a big thing. And then because of that, when I added in the flashbacks, the twist killer at the end of the flashbacks originally was never a big deal to me because I already had Jack as the twist killer. So in a sense, I didn't feel like I needed to, like, the flashbacks were never as, because I didn't have the idea first. So even when I started writing it, the John Buck twist didn't exist. I
Oh,
was going to
okay.
have it. I was going to have it be a pediatrician, and I was going to have it them interview the wrong person, and then because they're so eager to get it done, they make a mistake and do it. And then I was like, well, I need suspects. Well, as I was writing, I was like, I feel like them just looking at a crime scene isn't interesting enough. I need them to go to some suspects' houses. So I wrote Dr. Urich into the one scene, and I gave him an alibi so people wouldn't be expecting him to be a killer later.
I
Then I
love
wrote Carter, and I gave him an alibi. And then when they were doing the scene where they're putting up all the pictures of people and they're letting the pictures fall as they eliminate suspects, I noticed the connection. I was like, wait, I established that Carter and Urich knew each other. The whole thing I'm needing at the end is for them to interview one person and it be the other person. And all at once I was like, crap, I'm wasting this.
it.
I have a better twist here than what I'm going to do at the end. So that day I stopped writing immediately and I got on like the whiteboard I have and I started outlining how it would go if it was Carter and Urich. And originally Urich's name was Dr. Stevens. And I had already wrote the name John Buck as the name they gave the hotel. But as I was outlining everything, I was like, this works really well with there being two killers. It gives like another plot twist. It gives them a reason to think it's just the one killer. And then I noticed Buck had 4 letters, and I was like, could I do this? Because I originally hadn't even named Carter. And
That
when
was
I
like
outlined,
your
I was like,
aha moment.
yeah, like that was the one I 100% decided to do it. Because, like, again, I don't like the movies where the twist killer, you don't know what their name was. So for me, if I could spell out the name of the killer and try to get away with it, I thought that was too cool to not at least try. So I was like, well, Buck. So I renamed Dr. Stevens, Dr. Kevin Urich, and then renamed the father Benjamin Carter. So, because I knew that was one thing that, like, it'd be hard to catch, but it wouldn't make it less impactful when it was revealed.
Yeah.
So I was that. Plus, it was hard to, because I wanted, again, I don't like it. I knew when I was going to do that I had to make sure readers knew what their names was. Because if I mentioned their names once and then play it as a twist, people would be like, that's cheating. Just said it once, 20 pages, like 200 pages ago.
Yeah.
But it was really weird to find places where they could say their full name. Because, like, after they knew his name was Kevin Urich, they'd just call him Urich or the doctor. So I kept having to have them look at a case file that said their name, have Detective Washington clarify, oh, you mean Dr. Kevin Urich, Benjamin Carter, to, like, make sure that by the time the twist got there, people knew what the readers would know what the name was, so it didn't feel like I just pulled it out of nowhere.
You definitely put a lot of effort into how you planted the seeds, which is really cool because, like you said, a lot of times it's like they're mentioned once and then never again, and then oh my god, it was them the whole time. So that was pretty cool. Now
I've watched several movies that I've really been enjoying, and then it, like, I don't want to. Well, I like, for example, the movie Bone Collector. I loved that movie for 80% of it with Denzel Washington and everything. But then the twist killer happened, and I was like, I saw you once, dude. You were like at the opening 5 minutes. And then I was like, I don't even know, I can't even remember what this person's name is. And then he gave the whole speech about why he was doing it. And none of that had been, that's one of the reasons I added the flashbacks, because I didn't want Jack's speech about why he was doing it to feel, we didn't know this about Jack before. I wanted it to feel like, okay, this is, Jack's already established he'll do anything to kill the people, to, like, catch the characters. He's having hallucinations too, that kind of stuff. So I added the flashbacks to make sure I gave it time, because I'm picky about it. So
you wanted to be thorough. That's important.
I didn't want to do the thing that would annoy me.
So you said before earlier that you knew you wanted to make it a pediatrician. Now, did you know before you knew that you were going to make it a doctor pediatrician, being like the killers? Did you know beforehand that you were going to have the victims get younger from their 20s all the way down to like 12? Or was that something that came out like as you wrote?
Well, I kind of had the idea for both together. I knew my original plan was for the victims to get younger, because it almost makes it like a ticking clock. And I knew for what I wanted the horror to do, I wanted it to be someone fairly young, but I also didn't want them to start young. So I was like, well, I'll have the victims get younger, and then they can know ahead of time that this victim might be coming, but they have to wait for it to get to her age.
Yeah.
And then when I had that idea, I was like, well, if the original one was old, they would naturally look up doctors and not pediatricians.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, that could be a cool twist. And that was again when I thought that was originally the only twist in the flashback, that, oh, it's a pediatrician, not a doctor. And then when it added in Uric and Carter, it just worked really well. So it's funny, in the first draft, the way I worded it was, it's not a doctor, it's a pediatrician. And my editor left a comment. It's like, I don't think pediatricians will like the fact that you said they're not doctors. And I was like, yeah, I worded that poorly. So I went back and I was like, it's not a surgical doctor, it's a pediatrician, which was a nice catch because I worded it poorly.
So when it comes to Dr. Carter and his daughter, and what he gave her, I don't remember what he gave her, like he gave her some sort of chemical, she died slowly.
Yeah.
Was that, first of all, I gotta ask this question, why girls? Why only girls? Was it because he had a daughter?
Because it makes, honestly, because it makes it sadder.
So little girls make everything sadder.
Well, yeah, because like I knew if like, it's not that it's not sad, but I wanted a reason for Shade and Jack to completely just go insane.
Yeah.
And if like a 40-year-old guy died,
well, no, I meant
they
like
would be
you
sad,
had
but they
only
wouldn't.
you had only female children, no male children. It was all, from 20s down, all girls. And I wasn't sure if it's because of Dr. Carter having a daughter, or if it was just because you felt more comfortable just using girls after that.
Well, it was I knew I wanted it to be, I knew Nora was the first victim I actually really outlined, and I was like, I kind of had her pictured
really?
as, I had her pictured as similar to May in Nightmare,
that's even sadder.
where it's like just the nicest, most innocent child ever. And because of that, I was like, well, there didn't really seem to be a reason for me to switch it up. And typically killers tend to pick a very specific, like serial killers usually will either kill one or the other. So it matched the sameness of this kill happened this way. And the only variable within every killer is the fact that they're getting younger.
Yeah.
So, or within every victim, not killer, but
I know you meant.
Yeah, because I knew for Shade and Jack to be justified as to why they had too much trouble, which, not that Jack was justified, but logically a reason for him to go insane. I knew it needed to be something really sad. So I was like, well, Nora, I was like, young girl, picked out her age, had her be super like nice, innocent, someone that logically the reader wouldn't immediately assume I would actually kill. And then it kind of gave the sense. And then after that, I was just like, well, I don't want every victim to be 13 and a half. So I decided to do the age gap. And then from that, I went with the pediatrician and then kind of expanded from there.
I thought maybe it was because, now that you say that, you're right, serial killers normally pick a specific gender and even a specific age group sometimes. But I wasn't sure if it was because the way Dr. Carter killed, like the way because he had a daughter, and I just assumed it's because he had a daughter and it just kind of went down from there, that he looked at every little girl as like his daughter.
Yeah, that is definitely an aspect of it. And again, that's an aspect because Dr. Carter was invented to match the narrative I'd already written.
Yeah.
And then on the one hand, because at the end, there's not a massive explanation beyond, because Carter didn't like his daughter for vague reasons.
Yeah.
And then Uric was more the classical, oh, we're destined to kill people, the more insane serial killer. So I kind of tried to write them differently. And then because of that, Carter and Uric, it matched for Carter that it would only be girls because he didn't like his daughter. And then Uric's just crazy. So that just worked out for him. But
I mean, okay.
Which might go in a little more later, but
so let's talk about the dual timelines, because that's been like of the whole thing, that's kind of one of my favorite parts about it. Not just, I mean, I love the character development de-development, undevelopment, whatever you want to call it, of Shade and, well, all of them really, but having the dual timelines and how everything connected in the end, it made me think of the Insidious movies. And I told you that already, but was that something on your mind, everything coming together in like a circle like the Insidious movies? Or were you just, especially with that like fight scene at the end? Well, I want to talk about more of that later, but like, was that something you planned to do the same way, or did it just lay out that way?
Well, I hadn't watched Insidious at the time I was writing Shade, but I watched them now. I watched the first two. They're both really good. I actually didn't really get into horror movies until a couple of years ago, so it's like not something I'm catching up a lot now. But I actually had the idea for Nightmare before I'd even really watched horror movies, so
Oh,
that was
okay.
strange. But yeah, for the dual timelines, I got the idea. So in Nightmare, there's multiple timelines, and but the flashbacks aren't a massive part of the book. They're more to explain things. And I had the idea for the flashbacks in Nightmare because I'm a big fan of Arrow, and because it deals with two timelines and flashbacks a lot. And then I was trying to figure out a way to make Jack and Shade have more character development and to reinforce it. And then I was re-looking at Nightmare, and I was like, I use the flashbacks to give Vincent more characterization. There's no reason I can't do it for 1 sec. Okay, spam. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was like, there's no reason I can't do the dual timelines for Shade, just like I did Nightmare. And then when I started outlining, I was like, I actually have a lot of material here for the flashbacks. I might can do it a 1-to-1 alternating. And then at the end, because I really want to try stuff that I haven't, like I really want to try new things and do cool stuff with writing that isn't necessarily done a lot. And there's been other books that have like moved between two timelines and stuff, but I haven't personally seen it done as quickly. So pretty soon when I realized I could end it at the same spot, I was like, this can be something cool that sets the book apart, where like within paragraph to paragraph, it's moving back and forth, and it kind of will up the tension and it'll play
Yeah,
off of each other.
it definitely did, especially toward the end there.
Yeah, and then especially because I did paragraph, and then when I was doing paragraph, I was like, there's no reason I can't do it mid-sentence.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try it mid-sentence, even though I knew it would be difficult. Because one cool thing I did, which wasn't really necessary, but I did anyway, is when it's crossing over from past to present to past in the fight scene,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll cross over like Jack struck, and then it moves Shade in the mouth. If you removed the present day and then just moved, it would still work with the past chapters.
Yeah, it's like
So like,
but two, the way I read it, the way I saw it in my head was two different fights that mirrored each other, and they were going back to back to back. And when I was reading it, I was like, wait, which fight am I reading? And I'm like, oh my God, it's both. So that was when that realization hit me, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool.
yeah, it because like and because of that, because like literally you could take out the other timeline, and the fight scene would still be written the exact same. Like the sentence that breaks off and moves to past present would break off and move to past too. And because of that, I had to make the one beginning of a sentence work with two other ends of a sentence. And then to outline that was very difficult, but I thought it ended up being worth it. And then
I think it was
the
great.
main issue with the timelines, I couldn't figure out how to make it be easy to tell it apart. Because I knew I wanted, because I could have done like time codes at the top like 8 months ago now, but I knew the speed at which I wanted to cross-cut between them, that wasn't going to be enough. And it was driving me insane trying to figure out an easy way to establish which is which. And I was actually just driving, and all of a sudden it hit me because I watched Memento recently again. And that movie used black and white film and color film to establish when it was moving backwards and forwards. And I sit there, I was like, how would I do? I was like, that would actually fix this, where I could have black and white for the past and normal for this. But how do I do black and white in a book? And it took me a while, but then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can just do it in italics.
Mm-hmm.
And then the font being different made an easy key where this is past, this is present. So after I realized that, it clicked, and then I realized I could actually do the crosscut stuff. So once I realized the italics aspect of it, I got more confident in it, but it was still, the whole time I was writing it, I was scared to get there because I knew if it didn't work, it would kill the rest of the book. And it was
I think
something
it was
very
great.
strange.
Yeah, no, it was definitely different. Another, like, before we talk about any more of the end stuff, I want to ask you about Shade in the prison and how he basically just bulldozed, he was a bulldozer. He went through cell block after cell block, just violently murdering people, and it was awesome. Especially the guy with the cell door, and he like closed it and basically just squished him to death. And let's talk about that. I want to know about how it was to write it, how it felt writing all the violence, how you got the idea for like headshots and just all the, just go.
Well, that was the thing. I knew right off the bat that I wanted it to be, and I was actually a little scared when I decided to have the more crime thriller focused flashbacks. I was scared that the extended action scenes wouldn't match the tone, and that some readers would be like, I don't want the fight scenes, I just want the other. But I wouldn't take them out because that was my first idea and I liked it. So I always, if I'm debating about something, I always just go, well, I think it's cool, so I'll do it. But for the flashbacks, and I thought about toning it down where Shay doesn't fight as many people. But again, the original idea was he's the one man army, he's just the bad guy. So I wanted to establish a lot. I tried to make every big fight scene different. Like the original one in the woods is more of a horror type scene, someone lurking in the shadows. Then the fight scene, plus I knew because of the twist, Shade couldn't kill FBI agents.
Yeah.
And so I was being like, well, I can't just, at some point that would have been noticeable and would have gave away the twist. So I was like, I can only probably do it once. So I had the original one, and I structured it as a slow reveal of who Shade was. He's coming, fighting. And then the prison one, I knew I wanted an interrogation scene between Shade and Sarah.
Yeah.
So that way Sarah could talk to him once before the ending. And that was also because without the flashbacks originally, that would have been one of the only moments where he had a little characterization. But I wanted to leave it in because I was like, well, I can move him into an interrogation room in a prison. And then if there are prisoners that attack him first and supposedly they're on death row, it's kind of justified that he could kill them all, especially since they are attacking him. So that gave me, because I wanted the violence, I just knew he could kill FBI agents. So that came from there. And I tried to make them, I did try to make them different. Like the original one, it's so many hallways left to go. In the prisoners, it's counting down how many prisoners he has to kill before he gets out. And it's very much hand-to-hand combat.
Was insane. That was insane. Because I read the draft, I read it on my phone. So I'm laying in bed like this going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, it was great. I loved every inch of the prison scene, especially when he gets to the end and is taunted by the doctor and then just like rakes his heart out of his chest. Like, where were you writing that? Was that something you had planned when you knew he was going into the prison, or was that an afterthought?
It was something I knew. As soon as I realized he was going to be in the prison, I was like, as soon as I realized he'd be in the prison, and that even when I thought it was just going to be one surgeon, I always knew that prison scene was going to be where he killed him, because it makes sense for him to be in the prison. Plus, it kind of foreshadows a little that Jack is willing to go against the rules and open a door if he wants to kill someone. And it just felt like the last nice moment, as sad, as creepy as that is, between Shade and Jack, where they both agreed this person needs to die.
Yeah.
So, and the surgeon was a very terrible person, so I wanted him to get what he had coming to him. And then even when there was two surgeons, I wanted, since Europe was a little more of the big picture one,
the ringleader, I think,
and the one who actually killed Nora, I want it to be him. So I had that goal in mind, and that's why when I wrote because I wrote it as Shade fighting, and then I went back in later for the countdown, I just put X's. And then, because I didn't know how many he was going to do exactly. So then when I wrote the scene, I went back and added it. And that was another thing. I had Nightmare didn't have fight scenes. I mean, really, like Shade. I mean, Vincent and
No.
Scott, I think, punched each other once. But I was really scared that the fight scenes would either be not focused enough or they'd be too beat by beat. I didn't want to do it where it's like, ah, this is boring. Shade moves his arm, this. So I was still kind of worried that they might be too descriptive. But when I took it out, it just didn't seem like it was the same. So I want it to be describe Shade fighting 25 people. So at the end, I went back and added the numbers in it. Then I had the countdown there because I wanted the last person on the countdown to be Yurik. So,
Okay.
and then the,
Go ahead.
you can go.
No, go
ahead. Then the fight scene at the warehouse, because I'd already did hand to hand, and then the other one, I wanted to do more of a shootout and then make it hand to hand at the end. I had to rewrite the warehouse fight scene 3 times because I liked the first floor and I liked the second floor, but then the third floor originally was just another headshot thing.
Oh, okay.
And because I just did it twice, I was like, that's not interesting enough. So then I rewrote it again, and I had it with like martial artist ninjas. And I really loved the move, like the fight scene itself. I was really happy with how it turned out, like the way the weapons and stuff were used. But then when I reread it, I was like, it doesn't match the tone that Shade's fighting ninjas. This is insane. So I was like, okay, can't do that. So I went back and rewrote it a third time where it was a mixture of the two, where it was more of a fist fight, but more of a grounded fist fight to kind of set that up. And then the scene with Shade and Jack was a 1v1 extended fight sequence. So
you can write a fanfic of your own book and add ninjas, and I think that would be great. Like,
I saved that draft because at some point I'm gonna write a book that has ninjas in it. I don't know when, but at some point it'll probably come up, and I'm gonna pull that back out and just change Shade's name because I liked the movement too much to throw it away.
So when it comes from like Shade and Jack, why? Because his last name is Diamond, yeah?
Yeah.
Why does Shade go by his last name and Jack doesn't go by Diamond?
Well, on the one, I never established whether Shade's his first name or last name.
Oh, I just assumed it was his last name. It sounds like a last name.
Yeah, it took me a while to think of the name for Shade because I knew I wanted the name to be the title of the book and I wanted it to sound like creepy. When I finally thought of Shade, I was like, that's a cool sounding name. And then there's no other name I put with it that made sense and like seemed to work. And I was like, because I wanted to be like this ominous figure. So I was like, I'll just call him Shade and I'll never reveal what his other name is because it makes him seem more of a presence. And then for Jack, I wanted to call him Jack because Jack's typically a hero name, like Jack Reacher.
Okay.
For some reason, I'm blanking on another example, but there's quite a few. So I want it to be the typical hero name that can also kind of be creepy if it turns. And then Diamond made it a playing card, which worked with.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, because Jack Diamond makes it a playing card, which I named Diamond. And then again, that works for an unspecified reason. So because there will be a sequel to Shade, and that's something that
spoiler alert. It's all spoilers.
I named him after a playing card on purpose, but yeah, so I did that, and then Sarah, I pick one name and that's what I refer to the character as.
Okay.
Like Shade was Shade, Jack was Jack, Sarah was Sarah, but sometimes like it doesn't make sense for them not to say their last name, so I have to think of something that like works there, and Diamond and Michael seem to just kind of work.
Yeah. Okay, I also want to talk a little bit about Sarah too, because Sarah, her backstory was so fucking sad. Like her being frozen in like just sheer horror, not being able to help someone that she loved while they were dying, and she could have helped if she wasn't frozen, and then her, being a civilian again and not knowing whether she wanted to live or die, and then going through all this. Was that something when you decided Sarah's character and you decided her backstory, did you want to play her as depressed, confused, mentally ill, or did you just want her to be generally scared and unsure? Because depending on which way you read it, she could be either?
So yeah, I knew the character of Sarah. I always kind of had her pictured as a former veteran for some reason to like match, because at the end I knew she would at least try to help Shade fight Jack. So I wanted to establish that she could like,
You
she
mean a
wasn't
veteran,
just
not a former
innocent,
veteran?
scared victim. She could, what?
You mean a veteran, not a former veteran, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, and because I knew I didn't want her to be the just lady who just screams all the time. I wanted to establish she could fight back if she needed to, handle a
As a
gun and
woman,
stuff.
I appreciate that. Yes.
So, and because Shade was going to be a veteran, I was like, that matches. And then it took me a while because I immediately knew who Shade was. As soon as I had the idea for the hallucinations, I was like, his character that he's so racked with guilt that he couldn't save someone, it's driven him insane. That became Jack's character too, where they were both two sides of the same coin. They both couldn't save someone. It's just because of who they were, they reacted differently. And I'd originally tried to work in a different motivation for Sarah, but then I was like, I can do the same thing and have three different aspects and three ways of dealing with the same guilt. So I was like, what aspect can she have? So I was like, well, I already have her in the military. I'll have her not be able to save someone she cared about. And then I liked the idea that, like, in a sense, all three of them are very depressed and suicidal, and they deal with it in different ways. Jack thought about committing suicide, but realized instead of doing that, he'll kill people and solve the problem.
Yeah.
So it appears throughout the book that he dealt with it the most healthy way, but it's also kind of revealed to be creepy that he's so okay with it now. It's not healthy because he went too far the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
Shade struggled with it because he wouldn't give in that he needed to kill someone, but he also could not move on. It just, he was stuck focused there, but he also knew he still had something to do. And Sarah, I wanted hers to be the third aspect where she's still, in a sense, frozen in place. She's not really moving on. She just, at this point, she just wants to die. Because, like,
Oh, yeah,
I also had the idea for the really sad scene where she actually asks Shade, just please kill me. Because, like, she just can't deal with it. Because I wanted, at the end, I wanted Shade and Sarah meeting each other to kind of fix each other's problems. Sarah realized that, like, she could be like Shade and still move on and try to help people and like not give in and still go. And Shade realized he needed to be a little more like Sarah, where move on a little and like find a way to move out of it and kind of forget what happened. So I thought that, like, and then because Jack was the only one who was unable to get away from it, because like at the end, Shade grows because he's able to not listen to hallucination. Sarah grows because she comes back and tries to save Shade and doesn't get frozen again. But then Jack can't move on, and when Shade says, you don't have to do this, Jack's like, nah, I've come too far. So like Jack ended up getting killed because he couldn't accept that there was another way to deal with it. And I thought using all three characters to have them be the same character arc, I thought made it feel more cohesive.
So at the very beginning, Jack targets Sarah, and then they go through all this mess, and he's pretending to protect her, and then they end up back in the same spot, and then this fight ensues, and all hell breaks loose when Shade shows up. And then in the end, after the fight is over and if reinforcements come, people are like, oh crap, they end up partners. Why?
Well, it seemed like even before I knew there was going to be another one, it always seemed like the logical conclusion. In a very early outline, I'd considered having Shade die. It was a very early outline. I thought that might be where his character went. But then when I realized it wasn't, I was like, well, Shade spent so long. And because that's the thing, Shade has saved people.
Yeah.
He feels like he hasn't because he's never seen anyone that he's actually saved. He only sees the people who keeps dying. So I was like, Shade needs it, like, as a character. he needs a partner, like something that makes him not alone and remember he saved this person. And Sarah needs the reminder that Sarah needs to move on. And like her character arc was that she's going to stop standing still and start helping people again.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than introduce some other job that she just randomly gets, it felt like the natural conclusion to have them, because the whole time they think they're like, she thinks she's trying to kill him.
Yeah.
He does almost kill Shade by shooting him repeatedly.
That was my next question, actually.
So it felt like the natural conclusion, and the way where both their characters end up in a good place because they're both being able to move on and still help people.
So my next question was going to be, why was it Sarah to do this? Why was she the one to do the shooting?
Well, at that point, Shade wasn't as injured. He was more still in killing mode. And if Jack had tried to shoot him, Shade would have just killed him, like right then and there. Shade would have had a knife to throw or something. But because it was Sarah, Shade wasn't expecting her to then just shoot him. And it wasn't like he could turn and just throw a knife and kill her, because that's not his purpose. He's just trying to kill Jack. So, and it added more weight to the twist, I thought, that she's actually the one who killed the only person who was trying to save her. So it made the twist of it being Jack give more of an impact. And it just felt, because the scene on the dock is one of the first scenes, or not the dock, but outside the warehouse, where like the water and the rain and everything. That was one of the first scenes I had the idea for. And it was really one of the things that the whole book built to, of like, and originally at one point I thought about revealing that, I realized it wouldn't work, it needed later. So I always kind of, for some reason, pictured as Sarah the one to shoot him, because I knew until Shade got really injured, Jack wouldn't have really been able to do much. So I wanted it to make sense that Shade would get shot, not because he's just all of a sudden is able to get shot. It's because it's specifically Sarah. He wasn't ready for her to get the gun, and he can't just kill her offhand. So
I really did think that he was going to be dead after that. Like I really thought that was it. And I was like, well, if he's dying now or in the next couple hours, because like, you're not going to live with gun wounds like that for long. But it's like, where's the story going to go from here? Because there was still like several chapters left to go, and I was like, where is this going to go? But it went great.
Yeah, I actually outlined. So while I was doing the outline, I knew that like, under normal, I've tried to do it where like for a normal, I don't want to say for a normal, for more of a thriller could have ended there.
Yeah, of course.
Like that could have been the logical conclusion. No cross-cutting of timelines, no big twist reveal at the end. That could have been an ending, but I wanted it to be where the next section, where everything goes to crap, it does kind of leave you with, where's it going to go from here? But looking back, it never could have ended there, because it was always going to be back at the forest, Shade and Jack, the like fight scene. So I wrote it where for a brief second, it might be like, oh, where's it going to go? It ended here, but that gives that makes it where you then don't know where it's about to go. So again, everything I did was to try to make the Jack twist have more of an impact. And even the hallucinations, to an extent, I thought the reveal of Jack looking off and seeing the thing is actually funny about that. He might get mad at me, but I have my family always reads my drafts, and my older brother, one of them, read the book and he didn't see it. I use them as the test to see if they don't see the twist coming. He didn't see it coming that Jack's going to be the killer. And then about 9 months later, when I'd edited it multiple times and I wanted them to go over it one last time, make sure there's no new mistakes. After he finished it, he walked out. He's like, I forgot Jack was the killer, and it tricked me a second time. And he's like, it was the same moment. And I thought that was funny, because it was the exact moment that I wanted it, when Jack looks behind and sees Nora, because I wanted that to be played off creepy.
It was creepy.
Where like this entire time he's been seeing people get cut with blood, and he's just like, because Shade's creepy, but Shade reacts like a person would. Yeah. Where he's freaking out, whereas Jack's gotten so calm. Because Jack even comments one thing of foreshadowing I liked was at the very beginning. At the very beginning, Jack comments, uh, true insanity isn't what everyone always thinks it is. It's never the psychotic person rambling in the corner or the crazy lunatic. It's always the person who's calm because he spent so much time faking it that it appears normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was kind of foreshadowing that the twist killer isn't going to be Shade, who's not hiding that he's insane. It's Jack, who's spent so long faking it, he's became okay with it.
Yeah.
So, and then I want to foreshadow, so I had like him not seeing the blood on his sleeves and then stuff like that, where it kind of goes from there. But
at the beginning when Jack comes into Sarah's home and plays the good FBI agent, someone's after you, like I thought that was creepy, but then when reinforcements shows up, I'm like, oh, maybe it's not. And then he was like, why are you here? And I'm like, there like just from the beginning of the book I was like, well, this could be bad. And then when Shade was introduced as like, this guy's coming to kill you, I was like, oh, okay, maybe. Like I never really saw Jack as being the bad guy until that like flip switch moment. And I was like, oh crap, now we got 2 serial killers. So
yeah, I definitely tried to write that opening scene as creepy because like if you know what it's about, it is creepy, but it's just enough of uncertainty because it's basically I wrote it as an exact parallel as how he talked to the woman in the Edge of the Force. Like literally, he even says the exact same stuff.
Everything.
He was going through the motions. I looked back at what I'd previously written. I was like, okay, I can just plagiarize this verbatim. But yeah, so I wanted that, and then that's the thing because like every scene with Jack, that's one thing I wanted an excuse for Jack to not just kill her immediately. So I was like, well, I'll have the other police show up. That'll stop him from getting it, but then it will explain that was his goal. And then because she can draw a gun, that was an excuse for him to not just offer in the FBI agent in the prison cell. And then I also needed a reason that Shade didn't just call and say, hey, Director Williams, by the way, Jack's the bad guy. So at the end, Jack makes a comment where to a certain point, Shade knew Jack was catching the serial killer, so he was almost letting him until he realized he was going to kill someone else. And then Sarah asks, why didn't you tell me in the thing? And he's like, would you have believed me? Because at that point, everyone was so sure Shade was crazy.
Yeah.
He knew it wouldn't have made a difference.
I mean, so as the reader, I thought he was crazy. Like I thought I thought he had lost his shit just in general. Like between not just because of the hallucinations and him seeing like these dead, rotting girls around him. It wasn't just that. It was the fact that like I imagined him walking around at like almost apish, where he's very animalistic, and that's how I imagined him, but also crazy. So like that's how I was imagining him. But then I was also imagining Jack as this just really sickly looking person, and then like my imagining of him being sickly got like he deteriorated in my mind as I read. And then when he started hallucinating, I'm like, oh, how are they both hallucinating the same thing? So that was cool.
Yeah, I pictured Jack as more of Tom Cruise from Jack Reacher, where he's just the more nice, at least originally that's how he appeared, the more nice.
Yeah, but he deteriorated as the book went on, which is what I thought.
Yeah, within the flashbacks, he definitely gets in poor health. And then Shade, even off the bat, I wrote Shade as being creepy, like the line where Jack gives him a hard time because spiders crawl away from him. And then as it goes on, it just keeps getting worse. So they both deteriorate, but they both deteriorated in different ways. And that was another thing I liked of the flashbacks, because like moving between where they end up and then flashing back to like at the beginning of the flashback, Jack and Shade aren't doing that rough. They're both fine. And then to cut to Shade being insane, Jack trying to stop him, I felt like it added a little bit of an ominous to what actually happened to make these two seemingly decent people go to such extremes. I thought worked with the like way the characters kept their development cross-cut between the timelines.
I think you did a fantastic job on this book. I think it actually might be better than Nightmare. just because your writing was a lot better too. You can definitely tell that you progressed as a writer, as an author, but both stories are phenomenal. I love them both. So those are literally all the questions I have for you, I think. Yep. Nope. Yep. That's it. That's all I have. So is there anything else you want to say about the book or maybe the upcoming possible sequel before we go?
Yeah, we'll talk about sequel little. So, since this is spoiler, I'll show off the title card again. But it says
Ace
Agent Shade
of.
and Sarah will return an Ace of. So I actually know what the title is. I just don't want to reveal it yet. But yeah, it's funny. I never planned on doing a sequel to Shade. During the whole outlining, at no point was I ever going to, because for me the twist was Shade and Jack. At that point, there's like nowhere to go from there. But then one night, I was thinking about their character arcs, and I was like, just for fun, where would they end up after this book? And I realized Shade's character arc matched something else, and I was like, when I had that, I was like, that's actually solved. I was like, that's actually a cool concept. And I realized I had a concept for another thing. I realized Shade's storyline would match it, because I very much don't want to write a sequel just for the sake of,
Writing a
hey,
sequel.
here's another one, cash in on the thing. I don't want to do a sequel if it's not going to at least attempt to be as like creative and stuff as the original. So I wasn't ever going to do one, but when I had the idea, I just realized I was like, this is a really, at least to me, it was a really cool way to continue the story and to raise the stakes. And I set up quite a bit of the stuff that's going to be in the sequel. I set up pieces of it in this book, like aspects of the where it will go. I kind of hinted at without leaving. I try to not leave like open questions so it feels like a conclusion, but there's stuff I can build on later. So I'm pretty excited for it. It's going to be a little bit before I get to it. I'm going to write again the slashers next, and then there's two other. Right now, the sequel to Shade is currently planned to be my 6th book. So there's going to be a couple more first. There's a lot I got to do on outlining, make sure everything's okay. I have more outlined on the other ones first, so I'm going to do them ahead of time. But it could move up, but I don't think it will. But I wanted to set up within this book that there will be a sequel coming. So if you liked it, eventually we'll get there.
I mean, good writing takes time. So take all the time. Just don't do what George R.R. Martin does and put out a book a millennia. So
yeah, it won't. I'll be releasing other books while I work towards Ace. But
no, I
yeah.
think I think that this book was great. I'm excited to see your next book, your slasher novel, because you just kind of going back and forth between I'm going to do horror, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I think that's great because you're widening your palette of writing, you're widening your audience, and I think that's important for an author, just in my opinion. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on and doing this spoiler-filled, discussion of Shade with me. And I hope that you as the viewer also had a good time, and we will see you later. Bye.
Bye.